It's time for Baby and Toddler Instructions with host Blythe Lipman. Blythe is a nationally renowned infant and toddler expert who has over 30 years' experience helping moms and dads regain their sanity, teaching them how to survive, and giving them the confidence they need to be the best parents ever. From sleeping to crying to potty training to choosing a preschool and so much more. If you're a parent, Baby and Toddler Instructions is the show you've been looking for. Now here's your host, Blythe Lipman.
Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever in the world you might be. It's 9 o'clock in Arizona. That's where I live. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in to Baby and Toddler Instructions today. If you're listening live, today is Wednesday, January 27th. I can't believe it's the end of the month again already. It goes so fast. Anyway, all my shows, over 200 of them are available 24/7 on TogiNet.com, Stitcher.com, iTunes.com, and of course my website, mybestparentingadvice.com. I've had so many great guests, wonderful parenting experts, and, take a peek and listen when you're exercising, when you're taking a walk, when you're trudging through the snow. My goodness, I hope everybody is shoveling out and everything's melting. What a terrible snowstorm everybody had back east. Wow, I was thinking it was January, you didn't get anything, and maybe, it'll be a nice warm winter, but I guess it's El Nino, that's what they say. Anyway, I have another wonderful guest that's going to be with me today in just a bit, Claude Knobler. He's an author and a dad, and can't wait to talk to him. He is a stay-at-home dad, and I'm sure has wonderful tips, but I will tell you more about him in just a few minutes because there were a number of recalls. Britex recalled the Be Safe 35 and Be Safe 35 Elite infant car seats and travel systems. It says the car seat carry handle can crack and break, allowing the seat to fall unexpectedly. Yikes. We carry our babies in the car seats by that handle. So if you have the Britex, B-R-I-T-A-X, any of those car seats or car seat travel systems, make sure you call the company. When I end my show today, go to mybestparentingadvice.com and babyinstructions.com, and I will put the contact numbers on there for you to call them. Also, Britex also recalled the Be Ready strollers. The foam padding on the stroller's arm bar can come off in fragments if the child bites the arm, posing a choking hazard. And the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts recalled Darth Vader and Disneyland's 60th infant bodysuits. The snaps on the bodysuits can detach, posing a choking hazard. We know everything goes in their mouth, so again, those are the Darth Vader suits. And IKEA recalled something called the Latjo tongue drums and drumstick sets. That's Lattjo. The rubber ball on the drumsticks can detach or be unscrewed, and again, right in the mouth. So those were the recalls for today. I'm so happy that the companies do recall these, so you can call them, but please do not try to fix them yourself. I know I say it every week, but don't try to fix the stuff yourself. It's, even though it may look like an easy fix, crazy glue isn't the fix. Calling the companies are the fix because everything goes in their mouth. I know, my grandson is teething and everything's in his mouth. So also, if you have if you do have a little one, check your toys, check your cribs, make sure the screws aren't loose, make sure there's no strings hanging on their clothing. Anything that's hanging is going to end up going in their mouth. They see a little tiny string on the floor that you probably can't even see. It'll be in the mouth. Get down on your hands and knees and crawl around with them and see what they see. You will be surprised how different it looks. So on that note, I want to share a couple things before I welcome my guest. I have to tell you, January is the season for runny noses, colds, and I know here in Arizona a number of children have had RSV, which is a virus that turns into another kind of virus called the bronchiolitis. Basically, to explain it simply, it's sort of like the babies and toddlers have bronchitis, but they're little and they can't cough it out and they don't know how to blow their noses and their lungs get inflamed and a lot of times they wheeze. So And it's also very, very, very contagious. The preschools must post it on their door per the health department if anybody has RSV, because, the little ones can catch it. Also, adults can get it, and it's more like a cold when we get it. Anyway, I wanted to share a few tips from Help. My Toddler Came Without Instructions, one of my books. There's a chapter on Will This Runny Nose Ever Stop? A couple things. If your baby is in preschool and they seem to have a cold, a runny nose, and they're just kind of crabby when they get up, if you give them Tylenol or some kind of medicine at 7 o'clock, I can guarantee you at 9 or 10, you're going to get that dreaded call. Come get your baby or toddler at school. So always have plan B. Little ones do get sick. Don't think you're going to fool the teachers. You can't fool us. We've seen it all. Anyway, those little ones need to be home if they're sick, because you don't want them to pass it on to the other kids, the teachers, or pick up something else. So, if they're sick when they get up, try to keep them home. If you can't stay home with them, have a babysitter for plan B, or if you haven't, if you have another parent or even a relative, because this time of year they do get those runny noses. If you can't get your little one to drink something if they are sick, sometimes just adding a little bit of fruit juice, they don't need a whole bottle of apple juice or a whole cup. I used to always water it down, put maybe a quarter of the juice to the rest of the water. And, some of the juices, I remember Juicy Juice was full of colors. They like seeing the colors. And also let them shake up the bottle or let them take a spoon and mix. Even though there's not anything really to mix, sometimes when you get your little ones involved, they're more apt to drink. So you want them to drink. Also, last but not least, if they have a fever and they're cranky and they're bored and they're a toddler or they're a baby that sits up, they're an older baby, let them play in a warm bath, not a cold one. Years ago, people used to think putting babies with fevers with a cool bath will help them break the fever. You'd never want to put your child in a cold bath. Make it nice and warm, not too warm. You can use the old wives' tale. Put your wrist, put your elbow in, check the temperature, and give them some toys. Let them play in the tub, and while they're in there, give them something to drink. And if they spill it in the water, oh well, it's fine. You just wash them. Anyway, that's a great thing for entertainment and to make them feel more comfortable. So you can get Help, My Baby Came Without Instructions, More Help, My Baby Came Without Instructions, and Help, My Toddler Came Without Instructions on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, on my website, mybestparentingadvice.com, and you can even get it on Audible. Go to audible.com/parents, and you can get a free download of my books, and I will get the credit. So anyway, those are the tips for my book today. And one more thing I wanted to share before I welcome my guest. There was an interesting article on Babbel.com. It says, scared of your baby? Don't worry, it's normal. This woman, Molly Thornburg, wrote a wonderful blog post on being scared of having her baby. This was her fourth. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this is because my guest has a terrific book called More Love, Less Panic. And so many times we're not sure of ourselves when we're a parent. And this mom wrote about the fact that she's already has 3 children, but here she has getting her fourth, and she's scared. And she doesn't know why she's scared. She's panicking, and she's thinking, I did this before. And the end of this little blog post was just terrific, because what she says is it's completely normal. You'll make mistakes. Not every day will be perfect. And yes, eventually your sweet little baby will grow up, so it's all relative. Some of the things we're scared of, you'll see that the next day they may not be that important. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up because it was a wonderful article. And yes, being scared is okay, but make sure you're there and enjoy every moment. So on that note, I want to tell you a little bit about my guest. He's got this wonderful book that I just couldn't put down called More Love, Less Panic, 7 Lessons I Learned About Life, Love, and Parenting after we adopted our son from Ethiopia. Claude Knobler's essays have appeared in Parenting Magazine, on NPR's This I Believe, as well as in one of the radio program's literary anthologies. This I Believe on Fatherhood and Worldwide Orphan Foundation, founder of Dr. Jane Aronson's Carried in Our Hearts. He lives in Los Angeles with his wife, Grace Naughty, and his son, Clay, who is now attending Duke University. Wow, that's so great. Anyway, we're going to have a commercial break in just a few minutes, but I do want to say good morning to Claude. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Am I saying your name correctly?
You are, but I'm afraid that you just turned my daughter into my wife. My wife's name is Mary.
Sorry.
My daughter's name is Grace.
I did
but other
say
than
that.
Full
Sorry.
marks.
Anyway, no, your wife, yeah, I see your wife's name many times. I have to say, I'm so excited that you can be on the show today because, honestly, you know, I could be upset with you because I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning reading your book.
Well, not the first time we've both been kept up by children. So
yes,
these things
I know. Your book is great, and after the commercial break, I can't wait to hear all about this adventure in adopting your son. Is it Naughty?
Natty, yes.
Natty, okay. I mean, everybody should get this book just to see the picture alone. He looks like he's so cute, and you can just looking at his eyes. There's one picture in here. He looks like maybe a little terror. I'm not sure.
He is certainly one of the most handsome and one of the most extraordinary people I know.
Oh my gosh, he's so handsome. And you know, it's interesting because I started to read this book, and I do get a lot of books. I have a lot of authors that come on my show, and you know, I try to read all their books, and I have to tell you, this book I absolutely could not put down. I mean, it is so great, and you have such wonderful messages in here, and especially being a stay-at-home dad. So when we come back from our break, I am going to ask you about your adventure, how it started. You know, tell my listeners how it even started, because you have letters that you wrote to your wife when you were in Ethiopia about meeting Natty and how he didn't speak any English and trying to communicate. And I'll tell you what, and there's also a piece in it that it made me cry when he said goodbye to his mom. I will let you share why you were adopting him and the story about his mother, which is very sad, but you know, our life isn't always so easy. So I will have you share that when we come back from the break. And I am also at some point going to ask you what your favorite parenting tip is. So something to think about.
Okay.
Here comes the music. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Help My Baby Came Without Instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these.
Do you ever wonder if you're the only woman who runs errands in her yoga pants so it will look like she went to the gym? Or how about the only mom who feeds her kids raw cookie dough? Or are you the only one who cooks her family cold cereal for dinner? Do you need more laughter and less loudness? More self-love and less self-loathing? More joy and less judgment? You're not alone. Come to the living room, a place where we get comfy, candid, and confident together. Come seeking sanctuary and leave feeling renewed. We're saving a seat for you. Give yourself some living room today.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
We all know how important it is to drink water throughout the day. It is especially crucial when the temperatures are high and it is oh so hot. Drinking water is also a significant element in weight loss. Why is that? Water, like food, takes up room in your stomach and it curbs your appetite. According to Eat This, Not That, a study was conducted by the American Chemical Society. They found that dieters who ate low-calorie foods, who drank 2 cups of water, which is 16 ounces, lost nearly 5 more pounds in 12 weeks than dieters who did not consume that much water. Drinking water gives you a feeling of fullness, so when you eat less. Drinking 8 glasses of water a day aids in weight loss and has innumerable benefits. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. I have a wonderful guest today. His name is Claude Knobler. He wrote a book called More Love, Less Panic, 7 Lessons I Learned About Life, Love, and Parenting After We Adopted Our Son from Ethiopia. And I have to say, this is such a good book. If you weren't with us the first quarter, I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning reading this book. It's such a great book. And by the way, if you have a question, want to say hello, or just want to call us, the number here is 877-864-4869. So you can call us during the show. So tell my listeners, how did this even come about? You're going to adopt another child.
Well, my wife and I had 2 children. And, it always, I think, people think, oh, that's so wonderful. You adopted a child from Africa, and aren't you wonderful? And the sad truth is I was really just trying to impress my wife. And when the Sunday newspaper came one week, there was an article about children in an orphanage in Ethiopia. And I suggested that my wife read the article, and I said, maybe we should think about this. And I never thought she'd say yes. I thought she'd
what
say
happened
no.
to flowers and candy?
Yeah, well, I just kind of thought she'd think I was wonderful and we'd never do anything about it, and I'd always sort of have that in my back pocket as aren't I a wonderful guy? And instead my wife sort of surprised me and said, that's something we might consider doing, and we began a year-long process and eventually adopted our son Natty. So, I was really just trying to look good. I don't think I'm nearly as good a person as I may sound every now and again.
So do you still look really good to her after how old is he, 11 and a half?
Oh, no, Natty is, we've had Natty for 11 years, but he's been,
he was 5.
He was 5, so he is now, actually, I guess we've had him for 12 years because he is a 17-year-old young man who just drove off to school with with his sister. So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I have a bunch of teenagers now.
So here's my question. I could almost have butterflies in my stomach when I was reading this part. What did you think when you first saw him? Because I know you talked about getting pictures, and there was a picture that was the size of a stamp, and what did you think when you first set real eyes on him after such a long trip too?
Yeah, it's a really strange. I don't know how adoption is done now. I'm sure things have changed, but we originally were sent videos, of children, and it's an impossible thing to try and pick a child and say, yes, that's our son, or maybe we'll adopt that child. And, we just felt completely overwhelmed. And one day they sent a video and a little picture of a boy, and the picture was, as you said, about the size of a stamp. And Natty is a beautiful, handsome young man, but that particular picture wasn't really a very good one, to be honest. But I just kept it on my desk. I didn't throw it away for some reason. And when the video came and we saw Natty, my son was 7 years old and my daughter was 5, and my wife and I we put the video in, and the kids walked in, and we saw Natty, and we all instantly said, yes, that's him. And I don't know why we said that. I think so much of parenting we feel that we have a job to do, and yet so much of it is so natural and happens without us in a way. We didn't have to find the right person for us. He was just our son. We just knew it. And so I flew to Ethiopia after we had completed all the paperwork and written to Natty and all the things you do. And the first time I saw Natty, I had flown to Ethiopia, and I was very exhausted and not particularly physically well at that point from the traveling. And the first time I saw him, he was standing outside the gates of the orphanage in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And the first thing we did was he just grabbed me. He just gave me this incredibly tight hug, and we hugged. And then I kind of, took a second and looked at him, and I thought, oh, my son has a beard. And it doesn't really make me look that good to say that, but I really did think, wow, my 5-year-old son has a beard. Isn't that strange? Because I was very tired and overwhelmed. And what he had, actually, was he had stitches. He was having a great time running around the orphanage, having the time of his life, and he had run into a table. And they had given him stitches, and the string was still, it wasn't done very well, and the string was sort of hanging off of his chin. And immediately, that was the first thing I learned, really, about parenting all 3 of my kids from adopting Natty, was that, Natty was a guy who, again, was having so much fun in an orphanage in Ethiopia that he'd run into a table. Natty is not a quiet guy. Natty is not a studious guy. Natty is a guy who has so much fun he can, run into a table in Ethiopia. And so much of what we do as parents is we try to mold our children. We try and instill these ideas. And I want you to be like this, and this is what you need to be successful. And, anybody who has 2 children knows that they come out differently. They come out exactly who they are. And our job isn't to turn them into something they're not. It's to find the best places for who they already are. And Natty taught me that from the very beginning, because if your kid is so happy in an orphanage in Ethiopia that he's a risk to himself, you're really not going to get him to be anything else.
That's so funny about the beard, because, I can just imagine you're going, oh, okay, you know what? I'm hallucinating from my trip, and do I have second thoughts? How does a 5-year-old have a beard? That's such a funny story.
I remember not even being particularly surprised in that way that you can be when you're so completely jet-lagged, that I just thought, oh, facial hair, okay,
At 5.
Took me a little bit to think, well, I don't think that's it. And then, of course, he just had string hanging from his chin, which is healed beautifully, by the way, I should say.
So you have a chapter, one of your chapters that I love them all, is worrying doesn't help when you don't know what to worry, and you only need 4 words. Talk about the 4 words, because, with the little, when your children are little, they don't know words anyway. Until they're like 3, you say, use your words. But when you meet somebody that doesn't even have the same language, were you scared to communicate? I mean, did you sing? I know you talk a lot about how he loved to sing.
Yeah, people don't love when I sing, so I try. That wasn't much of an option for me. But, it's funny, because one of the things that I learned in adopting Natty, and everything I learned and everything I talk about in the book, is really true not only of adoption, because, as I said, I have 2 other children, and everything I learned in adopting Natty was true for all 3 of my kids. And the main thing that I have learned as a parent is that I tend to take my love and I turn it into fear. It's very hard to love as much as we love our children and not have it kind of turn into this other thing of this just, are they okay? Am I doing the right thing? You can spend your entire life with your children making that gasping noise and saying, is it okay? And, with Natty, we had some very legitimate things to be worried about. We didn't speak the same language. Natty is black. We're white. Natty spoke no English. I knew that he spoke Amharic, which is the language they speak in Ethiopia. I had about 9 or 10 months to try and learn Amharic before I flew to Ethiopia to get my son. And in that 10 months, I learned 4 words, because I'm not a very good study with language. And the 4 words I learned, 2 of them are about bathroom functions. Shent, and the other one is actually a word that's pretty universal. And then I learned Baka and Ishi. And Ishi means it's okay. Ishi, like they're there. And Baka means knock it off, enough, stop it. And I thought, how will I communicate with this child? And he'll be so different than us, and he'll, what if being a mixed-race family is impossible? And, what I found is I'm really not very good at worrying, because I perpetually choose the wrong things to worry about. I worry about things that don't happen. Nobody wakes up at 3 in the morning and thinks about good things that may occur. Everybody thinks of catastrophic situations that could occur. And most of what I worry about doesn't really ever happen. Other things do. There are definitely things that can happen. But very quickly, Natty learned English, and, our language gulf wasn't much of a problem. And it is true, by the way, with a toddler, if you know how to say, do you need to go to the bathroom, and both of those functions, and you know how to say okay and there, that pretty much covers it for a good long time. That's really, you're able to get by. And, Natty, the problems that we had with Natty weren't that we didn't speak the same language. They certainly weren't that we were of a different race, because, Natty's a teenager now, and sometimes he'll say to me, we're Jewish, and sometimes Natty will say to me, Dad, can I have a car? And I'll say, no, of course you cannot have a car. And he'll say, is it because I'm black? And I'll say, no, Natty, it's because you're Jewish. We don't really struggle with the race component. What we struggled with was that Natty had too much confidence. He was such a strong personality, and we never imagined, what if the 5-year-old orphan we adopt is too confident? And yet Natty was a kid who, as soon as he learned English, would come downstairs for breakfast every day, blowing kisses to an invisible crowd and saying, Natty Knobler is awake. Thank you very much.
What a trip.
And we didn't know how to deal with that. So, things will happen, but they'll almost never be the things you worry about.
That's pretty funny. You know what a great, it's funny, we're role models for our kids, but what a great role model for us, because as adults, I just think about how many adults get up and announce themselves and blow kisses. We get up and we're running around and we have to get dressed and we have to do all kinds of things before we, to start the day. It's really funny. Maybe I'll start doing that and see what happens. My dogs will probably bark at me. But isn't it funny how sometimes it can change? Who's the better role model? I think that's a terrific story. We're going to have a break in just a few seconds, so when we come back, I'm going to ask you to tell my listeners about his family and why he actually was in the orphanage, because it's very sad. It's very sad, but my gosh, I would love to meet Natty. Just hearing about him and seeing his pictures in your book, he sounds like such a terrific young man now. And young man is true. He's not 5 anymore. You said 17. Wow. I bet it went quickly. Well, here comes the music. And when we come back, we'll talk again to Claude Knobler. Claude Knobler, the author of More Love, Less Panic. We will be right back.
We'll be right back with more help. For help, my baby came without instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these. In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward, with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Reaching out from the heartland of the United States with quality programming, this is TogiNet Radio.
I am not the woman I used to be. I'm free with Minister Diane Jones. Monday nights at 10, 9 Central on TogiNet. This is your chance, ladies, to hear stories of hope and healing from someone who's been there. Someone who has fought back from the horrors of incest. Minister Diane's innocence was stolen from her in the land of alcoholism and mental illness, which led to her being emotionally, physically, and sexually abused by her parents. Yet in spite of this trauma, she has gone on to become a successful wife, mother, registered nurse, and minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm not the woman I used to be. I'm Free is a straight-up show to enlighten you and to lighten your load. Do not let the weight of this world or the things that have happened to you control your life. For more on the show and Diane and her book, The Story of Me, email her directly from her show page here on TogiNet. Then, join us for I'm Not the Woman I Used to Be, I'm Free, with Minister Diane Jones, Monday nights at 10, 9 Central on TogiNet.com. Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. I'm talking to my wonderful guest, dad and author, Claude Knobler. He wrote a book called More Love, Less Panic, 7 Lessons I Learned About Life, Love, and Parenting after we adopted our son from Ethiopia. And we're talking about he adopted this incredible child at 5, Natty, who is now 17, and he wrote a book about all the experiences and about parenting. Because, we're all kind of scared and panicky until we get it, and then our children do something else, and then we have to get it again. So before we talk about that, tell my listeners why he was being adopted.
Well, Natty's father died when he was 1 year old. He had contracted the AIDS virus through, the HIV virus through a bad blood transfusion after a car accident. His mother also contracted that, and she was no longer able to provide care for him, and so she put him into an orphanage. Because his mother was still and is still alive, we were able to have essentially an open adoption, and when I flew to Ethiopia, I was able to meet her, which really did terrify me, quite honestly. I mean, not because she was ill, but because it was such a overwhelming thought, and it really did turn out to be one of the most remarkable experiences anyone could have. We met in a restaurant in Ethiopia, and she really did give me her son, and she said, "You are the right family to raise my child," and I didn't discuss this in the book because it's happened afterwards, but this last summer, we went back to Ethiopia. We had a very strange coincidence. When I flew to Ethiopia the first time, I sat next to a woman who was adopting Natty's best friend from the orphanage, and that woman turned out to be a doctor, and she was establishing a hospital in Ethiopia. And so because of the random chance of where I sat on the plane, we were able to help get care for Natty's mother. And it's truly a bizarre thing to say, but because she gave up her son for adoption, she lived and is still alive far longer than she had expected to. And, we went back to Ethiopia this last summer, and we really are family. We've kept in close contact with her, and her health has had some ups and some downs, and I think adoption was definitely the right choice for her because she could not, I don't think, physically have provided care. But she loves him, and, we spent a week together and really had that experience not just for Natty, but all of us. And, she loved and adored Clay and Grace, the 2 children we already had before we adopted Natty. And, I now find that I have a family as large as the world. So it's a truly remarkable experience.
How did Natty feel seeing his birth mother?
Oh, I think I don't think there are enough words to describe that experience. I think, plus the truth is that being 17, no matter how remarkable your childhood is, 17 is 17, and every parent basically, embarrasses you. But I think it was, I think he connects very deeply both with his family and with the sense of being Ethiopian, and he's also a tremendously American kid. He's got feet in both countries. He's very, very connected online, and he's interested in business, and he's trying to set up a company to build headphones, and he's got a marketing plan, and when he was, I guess 6 years old, all of my kids at some point had a lemonade stand, and they made their few dollars and sold to the neighbors. And Natty, after half an hour, came back inside the house and said, "Dad, I want to move the lemonade stand." And I said, "Oh, okay, where?" He said, "Well, there's a house that's for sale 2 streets away." I said, "Why do you want to be there?" He said, "Foot traffic." So Natty, Natty is really very American, very Ethiopian, and very much himself. So he's a bit of everything.
What a great guy, because I'm looking at lesson number 3. There are no apples on oak trees. How trying to turn my Ethiopian son into a neurotic Jew taught me it's nature, not nurture. And that story alone, I mean, to have the mind of your own, and as a parent to look at your child, because I look at my 2 children that are both grown, and they're both so different. I mean, one is in corporate America, the other one has a bagel business, and he's an actor, and, I don't care what I could have done. They are who they are, and that's what your whole book is about.
And I think that's an incredibly important thing that you don't want to learn that lesson too late, because it really is so easy to try and turn your children into what you think they need to be to succeed, because we're terrified. I mean, I have, as you mentioned when you introduced me, I have a 19-year-old son who's at Duke, and I worry, and is he in the right major, and is he finding the right, and, people who like to talk a lot can be in radio, they can be in sales, they can be in all sorts of different areas. People who like to be very quiet and perhaps not as social, maybe they can be in research, they can be in any number of fields. But you can't say, I need my son to be a little bit more aggressive and outgoing, and I need my daughter to be a little bit quieter and a little bit. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing wrong with forks. There's nothing wrong with soup. The two don't work well together. If your child is an outgoing, aggressive person like Natty is, your job is to find the spot where they can succeed with those characteristics. And we spent years trying to turn Natty into a different kid. We had 2 kids who were very quiet, sweet, gentle, and Natty is, sweet, but he's not quiet and gentle. That's not who he is. And so we tried to turn Natty into the other 2, and the other 2 into Natty, and it really, I look back on that almost sadly. I think, I could have enjoyed it all so much more.
You can't look back, though, because I'm sure you enjoyed it. And it's so interesting. I'll tell you an interesting story, because I work in a preschool, and I deal with the little babies 6 weeks to 12 months, and a lot of times we'll do our projects with them, which is basically we let them put their hands in paint and smear it on the table or the paper or whatever. And it's so interesting to watch, because we have, I think of one child in particular, he would sit there for 3 hours and he uses one finger. There's another one that just smashes her hands all over and gets it all over her face. And there's another little one, and these are kids all under 1, that doesn't even want to touch the paint.
That's exactly right. They are who they are from that age on.
They are, and it's interesting because, in our day and age, parents are putting kids into every activity they can find by the time they're 2. And so many times I'll say, let them be. You know what? Let them stay in their pajamas. Let them play. Whatever they like to do. But it's all relative, isn't it? We don't know that until we look back.
And also, understand that some of the activities they're going to be terrible at. I made a joke a minute ago. I said, people don't want to hear me sing. Well, every kid, I was forced into piano lessons. The truth is I am utterly without musical sensibilities. I can listen to music, but that's as close as I should be allowed to an instrument, is listening to a song while I exercise. And to believe that you have to learn piano because otherwise how can you possibly get into Harvard in 17 years? It's that kind of panic. There's nothing wrong with the fear that we have as parents, and it's natural. But it's important to know that fear tends not to be useful. We tend to think, fear never shows up and says, "Hi, I'm panic." What it does is it gently taps you on the shoulder and says, "I have a few insights to share. I don't think that our child is doing well enough in music, and that's going to affect their long-term future." And suddenly, we're in a panic that our kid doesn't want to practice the violin. You know what? Very few people become violinists. very few people need to play the violin, and the ones that do usually find the way towards that instrument. And to believe that our fear is there to teach us is to commit to spending your life in a panic. And the most important thing you can do for your children is to enjoy them and to live your life in front of them. I don't have to panic and frantically try and convince my sons they should treat women well. I have to be kind and loving to my own wife, and they'll see that. They know what I do, because what we do is so loud that nobody can hear what we say anyway.
It's true. And you know what, especially with the little ones, after 3 words, they don't even pay attention to what you're saying. And it's funny, I'm sitting here smiling because when I was in 6th grade, one of my teachers, I'll never forget, Mrs. Wickward, she decided that I should play the violin because my grandfather, my little Jewish grandfather, played the violin at the Methodist Church for 50 years. So she pushed everybody to say I should play the violin. And, you know, you talk about your singing. I didn't even know how to hold it right. I think it lasted a month, and I would cry and say, I hate this instrument. So it's really, you can't push your kids into doing something that, you know, they just can't do. They can do other things. We all have our wonderful strengths, whatever they are.
That's right. And it's important to know that the world needs all of us. And that sounds very sort of granola-y, I know, but I mean that in a very practical way. I think I talk about in the book, my father, his mother, as all mothers of his generation, were convinced that the best thing to do was to be a doctor. There are always sick people. Doctors always make money. And so she, you know, nagged him into going to pre-med in college, and it would have been fine. But as it happens, he truly hates sick people and is terrified of blood, and, you know, really it didn't go well. And so what he decided to do was he thought he'd become a vet, because he also hates animals, and he thought, well, if they don't get better, who'll really care? So that didn't work either. And, you know, he really was fascinated with the stock market and business, and, you know, he takes care of other people's money, and he's done very well with that. The world needs everything that each person has. I remember my parents telling me, don't talk so much, don't make jokes about everything. I spent 15 years making jokes on radio stations around the world. It was a very good way to make a living. The world needs all of our skills. And if your child is really outgoing, the world needs them. And if your child is very quiet and introverted, that's okay too. The world needs them. And your job is not to change them into something else so that they'll find their place. It's to help them find what they do and how they can do that in their life.
Well, what a great message before our break. We're coming up to another break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you your favorite parenting tip. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Help My Baby Came Without Instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these. If you're ready for a big change in your work, your career, your happiness, your life, it's time for the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 Central on TogiNet.com. Marla believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible. Join us as successful life coach Marla Tabaka inspires you and her clients to explore, discover, and live your dreams by developing what she calls the $1 Million Mindset. Marla will inspire you to take action on your dreams and reveal secrets to success that will help you realize your own unique power. Tune into the $1 Million Mindset for heartwarming stories with Marla Tabaka. Learn tips and tricks to building a successful business and unlock the secrets to creating a happier, more balanced life through abundant thinking and attraction power. For more information on the $1 Million Mindset, go to our website, marlatabaka.com. That's MarlaTabaka.com. It's the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Reaching out from the heartland of the United States with quality programming, this is TogiNet Radio.
Homeschooling? Have questions? Get your pen and paper ready. It's the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Fridays at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. After a handsome blue-eyed Texan fell in love with Vivian at the Victoria Station in London, she found herself at DFW Airport with a tiny suitcase and a snazzy little duffel bag. Well, 25 years later, she is now happily married to that blue-eyed cowboy. They have 4 grown children ages 24 to 18 who became willing guinea pigs when she unwittingly stumbled upon the world of homeschooling. Wildflower Academy flourished for 15 years. They survived and thrived, and you can too. Vivian will be covering a wide range of issues that face homeschoolers. What do you do with kids in the summer? How to set up your one-room schoolhouse? How obedience is paramount? And what to do with those snakes? Plus, you'll be sharing ideas and insights that she gleaned from other homeschoolers. So join us for an engaging hour with the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney, Friday afternoons at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back. I can't believe we're up to the last part of our show on Baby and Toddler Instructions. I'm here with my wonderful guest, Claude Knobler, who wrote a book, More Love, Less Panic, 7 Lessons I Learned About Life, Love, and Parenting After We Adopted Our Son from Ethiopia. And this book, everybody should read this book. You know, and I'm looking at this chapter, Lesson 5, less than perfect is perfect enough. And just what we were talking about before the break, the world needs all of us. We're all perfect the way we are and whatever we're giving the world. So before the break, I said I was going to ask you your favorite parenting tip.
Well, I think I have 2. And one is a very big one and one is a very small one. But I think they're both good tips. The very big one is to be happy now. There's a tendency when you have kids to sort of keep looking over the horizon. Oh, I'll be so happy when they're out of diapers. Oh, I'll be so happy when I don't have to cart this car seat around anymore. Oh, I'll be so happy when. And, you know, I think that why wait? is my answer. Because each of the stages, you know, you're going to look back. One of the things I learned as a parent was that all of the things I worried about look ridiculous 2 years later. So that, you know, there's a period of time where I think every parent worries about nap schedules. But, you know, nobody really, again, like I have a son who's a sophomore at Duke, and my daughter is about to go off to University of Pennsylvania in the fall. And I want to assure everybody who might be listening that in no way was that because they had a good nap schedule when they were 2 years old. And, you know, when they're when Clay, my eldest, was 4, I worried because he was in kindergarten, I guess at 4 or 5 years old, and he wasn't reading at grade level. And I was really anxious about that. And, you know, 2 years later, I realized there is no grade level at kindergarten. He was learning to play with glue. He was fine. He reads books now that I can't understand. He's fine. Everything that you worry about, everything that you kind of groan about, everything that's so difficult, in 2 years you're going to look back and think, you know, that really wasn't so bad. That wasn't a big deal at all. What was I so worked up about? So be happy now was the first advice. The second advice I have is this is actually, More Love, Less Panic, is in a way the third book about my children that I wrote, but the first 2 were never meant to be published. And that's because when my kids were very young, I read in some magazine, I think of all people, Rosie O'Donnell, if I'm not mistaken, might have said this, but she said, once a week, write down the funny story. Just put it in your, you know, for me it's putting in my phone so that every once a week I would get a reminder, and I would sit down with just the kind of notebooks you find people in coffee shops writing into, and I would take 15 minutes and I would write down the cute and funny stories, and I would maybe paste some pictures in it. And so the first book was the Book of Clay, and the second book was the Book of Grace, and those were filled with the stories because amazingly, as bizarre as it may sound, you will forget those stories. But I would sit down with my children, and they'll still look at them. And you know, when I kiss my eldest son, I can only kiss a tiny little portion of his face because the rest has stubble, and it really is gross to me. But we look at the stories when he was 7 and 6 and 2, and, you know, I remember because of the writing it down, I would have forgotten that one day we were in traffic and I was tense and angry, and a little voice from behind me said, "Dad, are you thinking about what I'm thinking about?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, Clay, what are you thinking about?" And he said, butterflies? And I said, yes. Yes, son, I am. And we have all those silly little stories, the first words he said, and, little cute stories that are important. And he loves seeing those stories, and I love being able to remember them. So once a week, write down the funny thing your child said, the silly thing they did, because otherwise it'll be gone, and you'll think, what was he like when he was 4? And it's impossible to believe that will happen when he's 4 or she's 4, and that's your entire life. But it does all sort of slip away. So I'm thrilled. I think those are my 2 most valuable possessions, are those 2 little books that I wrote. And I'm lucky enough that the 3rd book is available, at bookstores, so I don't have to worry about losing it.
Right. What a great tip, because it's true, and I am so happy. The most important thing you said, besides to be happy, in the second tip is that you do forget. It's funny, the first child, you think you're going to remember every single thing. Then you have the second child, and you think, okay, you know what, I'll remember this. You don't remember because each stage is so different. And even as they get older, just the way you started the show with how Natty announces himself when he gets up in the morning. Right there, perfect. That's so funny. And such great tips. I love it.
They generate so many things at every stage of their life that the new stages replace the old ones. And so you suddenly only can remember what they're like now because you can't believe they were ever younger, or that that you went through everything you went through. And if you don't document it, it does tend to go away. It's similar to people say when you go on vacation, if you go to Paris, don't take a picture of the Eiffel Tower because there are plenty of pictures of that. Take pictures of the funny waiter who did that silly thing, the way that the place you have breakfast every morning, because those are the things that you really are going to want to remember.
It's true. And once I have a new grandson, and we've gone back to things that my daughter did when she was a baby. Like I found a piece of paper, the first 18 words she said. And I'm so happy I wrote it down, this little tiny piece of paper. So you do go back, and it's interesting because the older they get, when you have the family get-togethers, whether it's a holiday, a Passover, a Christmas, and Easter, you tend to go back and reminisce. And it's great to be able to pull things out, if you've forgotten. That's a terrific tip.
It's also a big favorite with your kids because, if you ever want to get a 12-year-old to sort of sit down on the couch quietly with you, and believe me, when you have a 12-year-old, you will want that at some point, you just say, oh, let me show you this, and you take out the book, and I know that my kids teenagers will still pull out the books and, oh, yeah, did I do that? Did I really? Clay, when he first learned to use the potty, used to go to all the other kids in his preschool and say, are you using the potty? I'm very proud of you. And, we certainly wouldn't remember that, but it just thrills him to be able to look at those stories, and that's really a wonderful thing to be able to give your kids as they get older, too. So.
It sure is. It never gets old. Never gets old. Great tips. Where can my listeners get your books?
I think you would have to work not to be able to get my book. I think you can get it at bookstores. You can get it on Amazon. You can download it from the Apple Store. You can call my mother, and she'll deliver it by hand. I think it's pretty available most everywhere. It's called More Love, Less Panic, and I think you'd have to really go out of your way not to find a copy.
And everybody should find a copy. You won't be able to put it down, and you'll be so happy. You might be mad that you're up till the middle of the night reading it, but you know what? It's so worth it. So what's in the works for Natty coming up? Because he sounds like an amazing, amazing young man.
Well, Natty is a junior in high school, which is, I think, one of the most awful experiences known to man. He's getting ready for standardized testing and college essays, and he is thinking about applying to schools in Washington, D.C., and Georgetown, and GW, and so he's sort of planning his entire future and learning how to be an adult as best he's able. So he's got a full plate, and then pretty soon I'm going to go from a stay-at-home father to a guy who's put into forced retirement.
Yes,
It's hard to be a stay-at-home father when your kids don't stay at home.
The next book. What does Natty want to do? Does he know?
I believe global domination is the current plan. But failing that, Natty is my retirement plan because he plans on making $1 billion before he's 30. And so I have to treat him with kindness and love and respect because I'm counting on some of that money when I'm older.
You know what? He sounds so great. And what about, and I didn't ask this question. We have just a few seconds before you have to go. What about Mom? How did she deal with all this?
She's a remarkable woman, and that's the tip, not about parenting but about life, is choose a remarkable person, because I know I lucked out and I'm not sure she did. So she works downtown in a very grown-up job doing things that I don't understand with finance, and we're starting to figure out what happens when the kids all leave the house. It's the next big adventure in marriage.
Next chapter. Well, you guys are just great. Thank you so much for being on the show. What a wonderful, fun time. And your book is terrific. So you have a great day, because I know you have another interview. Enjoy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Wow, what a wonderful guest. So much fun and such interesting information. And it's also true. I love writing down the funny stories. As Claude Knobler said, as a favorite tip, write down funny stories once a week. Great thing to do. And also be happy. Enjoy each moment with your children. Also, I wanted to tell you that if you're on Facebook, please like my pages. I have My Best Parent Advice and Baby Instructions. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest, and I love doing Periscopes, which is part of Twitter. They're little videos that stay on, I think, for 2 days, and I try to do 2 or 3 Periscopes a week. And it's lots of fun. I give lots of my baby toddler tips, parenting tips. I love doing my Periscopes. If you live in Arizona and you're just having a few issues, parenting things, I don't do anything medical. I do sleeping, crying, eating, potty training, biting, any of those non-medical issues. I do in-home in Arizona, unless you want to send me a plane ticket, video or telephone consults if you just need a little help. And I've been doing this for over 40 years. I love what I do. I love helping parents. I do classes. Anyway, get in touch with me. You can go to my website, mybestparentingadvice.com. I'm working on baby instructions. Mybestparentingadvice.com has all my contact information, recalls, my blog posts, and some humor. So I would like to leave you today with a little parenting humor. A mom says to her child, "Why are you making it so difficult to be the parent I always imagined I would be?" And diaper spelled backwards is repaid. Think about it. And the best yet, children are great imitators. So make sure you give them something great to imitate. Take a few seconds each day. It's so true. Watch, especially if you have little ones, watch your little ones, even your older ones. They're always watching you. And I can tell you, when they're grown up, you'll see them do things that you did when they were little as a parent, parenting your little ones, and they'll be doing the same things that you thought they never paid attention to. And there's nothing better, because we are, we are their greatest role models. So have a wonderful time this week. Enjoy your children. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.